Okay, yeah, it's working. What do we have here?
Just a recreation area.
Yeah, but it's called what? Tioga.
Tioga, yeah.
Yeah, and this was
the old mine site.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you worked here?
Yeah, I worked here for just a short time. Wasn't here very long. I think I was here in the winter, and then a little bit the following year when they closed the West Hill down. We come over and worked here one summer, and so that's about the size of it.
Okay, so what year was that when you worked here?
I don't remember. I mean, it's
1950 what? Because the pit operated from 1953 through 61 or 2, or am I wrong?
no, it's close in there. Yeah, it was probably over here sometime in 62, maybe 61, something like that. I can't remember exactly what year it was.
Okay, all right. Now we're gonna go on. We'll go on. Thank you. What can you tell me about Tioga? You worked at the Tioga Mine?
Yeah, I worked at, first I hired out at the West Hill, which is the same company. And one at West Hill and Tioga, about, same union and everything.
Which company was that?
Peck and Mathers,
Oh, okay.
and at that time. And I worked at the West Hill, started out there. I don't remember, 55, I think.
Okay.
And then later, I don't know, I can't remember if they closed the West Hill down for something and kept the Tioga open. But anyway, I wound up in Tioga, and I worked there for a while. And dates, I can't remember what dates you were, but I worked there for quite a while. Then eventually, I went back to the West Hill and finished up working there.
You said when you worked at the Tioga, they had a big conveyor system?
Yeah. At the time, they said it was the longest conveyor without a junction.
Mm-hmm.
Continuous belt. They claimed it was the longest one in the world at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And
It took the ore out of the bottom of the pit?
well, they had to crush your primary crusher down in the pit, and the trucks are dumping there. You'd have to climb up out of the pit. They dumped there, see, and then go up the conveyor belt. But before they got that tunnel dug, they decided to dig up a tunnel up.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a hell of a time with that. But they finally got that through. But in the meantime, they would haul the ore up out of the pit and then dump it, and they had they call it grizzly. Tall structure with what it is just a pocket that goes down into onto the belt. They had to pull the belt there to carry your ore away. And up on top, they didn't have a way to crush that big stuff because this was going direct into the plant. They had small crushers in there, and they had the big jaw crusher like they would normally have down in the pit. And so they would put it up there in that grizzly. They had grading, and maybe, I don't know what the heck it is, about a foot squares. And a piece of that wouldn't go through there. I don't know why they had laborers doing that, but they had somebody up there rolling those trunks out. And that stuff that wouldn't go through. So, and they had a belt attendant, and he was down below, and his name was Art Birch. And he was a young guy, just the same as me, and he started there. He had a family. And he was down below. This guy rolled this trunk off the side. And supposedly it weighed about 55 pounds. he landed down there on him. In the meantime, the shovel runner, the dragline operator, he saw that, and he was blowing his horn, but he couldn't get his attention. And, he was killed instantly. The reason I remember that rock is later on, I was in the warehouse with the warehouse man. We were doing some work in the warehouse, stocking parts and things. And I come across this big cardboard box with that rock in it. I asked him, I said, what the hell, what's this rock doing in here? What the hell's this for? He said, well, that's the rock that killed that Art Birch. They just put it in here for insurance reasons. Keep it. So,
that was all natural ore, right?
yeah.
And then they shipped that directly out by train?
Yeah, it had to be processed. It had to go up in the wash plant and processed there. I don't think there was any direct ore there, anything that was good enough to go straight to the cars.
Okay, so it went to the wash plant over in Coleraine?
No, they had the plant right there, Tioga.
Oh, okay. All right.
The conveyor belt went up, underground, went up, and then leveled off, and then went over to the plant. And that's where it was screened and washed, and then some of it that would go into out to a stockpile, which they'd have to run it through because there's so much rock in it. They'd have to run it back through. They had what they call a heavy media process. They had two big drums, and that coarse stuff would go in there, and the rock would actually float, and the iron would settle at the bottom of this drum. And as it come up, you would be putting it on there and onto the screen where it was re-washed.
It was a gravity system then?
Yeah, density.
Density.
It's all density.
Yeah.
And that's what it was, a density system. I think it was ground pig iron that they mixed to give it the real density, and just water solution. And all mixed in there, and the ore would settle, but the rock would lay on top.
Oh, okay.
And spill off when it goes into a chute, then onto the wash. Then you have to be washed because you had this heavy media, which is very expensive. Recycled and magnetic separator would pick that back up and then bring it back out, so you could keep recycling that heavy media.
Oh, okay.
Because that was too costly. You couldn't just let that go in with the ore. You had to wash it back out again and save, which they did, and they saved over and keep running it over. And that's the way that thing worked. The ore, you couldn't magnetic anything down here at this end of the range. It's non-magnetic ore, so that's the reason they had to do that process.
Yeah.
So they couldn't. They'd have to find some other process, and that heavy media was their only answer for this type of ore. And that was it. When that was washed, go out to the conveyor belts would take it out to the cars and load around cars. And, they had to, but when they started that mine, they had no railroad there. They had no way. Railroad hadn't been built across the river by the government dam. You know where that's at. Where the trestle is. That wasn't there. They had no heavy bridges, so they could get no heavy equipment over there until they got a railroad in there. Until the railroad was built, before they could bring stuff in on a car. Heavy stuff. But to get started, you have to start somewhere. So they, in the beginning, they brought two big D8 cats. Since they couldn't get over none of these bridges with that big cats, they took them down south of Kagama there. And I don't know what the number of that road is, but it goes back, they call them Matuska Fields, back there on Little McCag, on the west side of that, or the south side of that. And just woods all the way there to, there was no road around there, so it was just pure woods all the way north to the site, So they just walked those cats through.
Knocked on all the trees?
Well, they just run right over them. And they sunk that deep in there, in ruts. And then I hunted out there. That was, you could find that years and years later, where them tracks sunk in there. And they walked those cats all the way up over there, across Sugar Brook, and come out at the, there's an old farm back there. What was, I can't remember his name. But anyway, you come out there and then you go down they went right down the Sugar Lake Road with it. That was all gravel then, basically. There was no blacktop. So they could just walk those cats down there and to where the site is.
What'd they use the cats for?
Well, they had to get started. They had to clear some area.
To take the trees off and dig the
Yeah,
initial holes.
Yeah, there are windrowing trees and burning it and getting some openings there. It's just solid woods.
Yeah.
You know what the woods looks like? It's just where your friend there gets wild. That gets that syrup.
Yeah.
Same woods.
Yeah.
So they had a lot of maple in there. And yeah, they got that all cleared off and get something for a start. And in the meantime, the Great Northern was building that railroad spur in there. And they couldn't get nothing over there, but the area there is just nothing but a real soupy clay.
Mm-hmm.
And when it rains, it just turns into grease. And they had so in West Hills operating, before they did, and they had nothing but gravel. So, and these bridges wouldn't hold nothing big, but they hired a whole bunch of local guys with some little single axle dump trucks. They'd hold about 3 yards of gravel, something like that. And they hired a whole fleet of them to come out of the West Hill with that gravel, and then they could go over the old bridge and back there and put something on them roads to get some traction. It was just soup. And it was that way all the way until they got their wash plant going, and then they have all this coarse rejects, tailings from the wash plant. Well, then you got an unlimited amount of that, and that makes good road material. It was up to them, they had to get everything going before they could get any footing there. They started digging and it rained a little bit, and the trucks couldn't even get up the hill. They would just sit there and spin. You'd have to push them with cats, and it was a mess for a long time. But the soil was that way. It was that way all the way down to ore. There was no gravel or nothing in there. So but they had, by that time, they had all the tailings they wanted for road material.
Why did it close? Were you there when it closed?
Yeah, I think so. They talked about some property south of there. They called it Jordan Reserve.
Mm-hmm.
Now I don't know where the hell that's at, but it's down the Sugar Lake Road, past down that road somewhere. There's a big reserve, and they kept talking about digging that. And if they did that, that'd be a 40-year mine. So there must be a lot of pretty good ore there. They wouldn't even talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
But that was on the table. But then it all, and then it was getting close to that taconite thing.
Mm-hmm.
When they passed that taconite amendment.
Right.
And so they decided that maybe they'd put all their money into taconite plants, which the steel companies wanted. They wanted some uniform material, for their furnaces.
Okay.
And that pellets are perfect. And then you can get maybe, I don't know what the grade is, like 67 to 70% iron.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that range. And that's perfect for so they kind of leaned on that way, and they decided to go invest in taconite plants.
It didn't close because the mine flooded?
The mine flooded?
Did the mine flood?
No.
No.
I don't know where that story ever got started.
Oh, okay.
I had guys tell me they lost trucks and cats down there. It's so silly that they wouldn't shut the pumps off. They had something down there. Kept the pumps going until they moved everything out that they wanted. Then they pulled the pumps out. But anyway, it's silly. I heard that story. It makes no sense at all.
You left there and then went where?
Well, it was just kind of...
Well, this is the Tioga Pit, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
And they built that road across, they split Lake Kavanaugh?
That looks like it, yeah.
That's the road they built across when they started the mine, right?
Yeah, I don't know where that tunnel entrance
Well,
must have been.
there was a tunnel that brought the ore from the bottom of the pit up here.
Crusher house is down in here. And it went under and come up before you get to the plant underground. And then it come up on the ramp and everything went up to the plant.
The plant was behind us.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't remember where. That house looked like it's built, what I thought would be on that railroad bridge. Yeah. Or maybe not. I don't know. That has changed.
What do we have across? What do we have across the lake over there? Is that the old mine dumps?
Yeah. 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 Yeah, that's the high dump, surface dump.
Where they dumped the ore that
The surface.
the surface material before they took the ore out of here.
To get down to the ore, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
They dumped all that over there.
And now this is only used. This is only used for recreational activity.
Yeah.
But you said at one time that this was what? This was when there was no water in it. You said that there weren't any trucks left in here.
Nothing left in here, no.
Okay.
When they quit pumping water out, yeah, they just let it fill up.
And it didn't flood immediately, right?
I don't know how long it took. It takes a while.
All right.
And they could easily get everything that they want out of there. I don't know what they took out. I suppose a lot of the crusher house and motors and whatever is down there, they took out first and then pulled the pumps out and let it fill up.
Okay, that's the old buildings left over from the mine.
Yeah, but I mean,
And you said the train tracks ran between here and where they loaded was between here and those buildings.
it's full of there, look, huh? Railroad ties
That is where the ore came in. And Terry said there was a bridge right here that they used to drive under. And then the ore plant was right here. Doesn't look like an ore plant now because the buildings are all gone, and there were 3 piles. And they were piled right here.
The thing that come off this conveyor was the wash plant. I don't know why they took them out of here. They don't go very far, they just go down in the ground a ways. Then they had a feeder on there and your conveyor belt. Feeder was right in the middle of that big surge valve.
You said the ore came out of the pit and it was first put ground and put in a pile? Or what happened?
No, primary crusher was in the pit. That crushed the big stuff down, okay? Well, then it went up to the plant, and in the plant they had 2 cone crushers, they called them. They crushed it down finer, and then it went onto the bar screens, shaker screens, where water washed the ore, washed all the fines out of it, mud and all that crap. Washed that out, and then they went out to the heavy media pile. And from the heavy media pile, went back in the plant where it was processed with the media and to get your ore out, and then that went to the cars. Same thing with the fines. The fines are put in a pile, and then that goes back into the plant process, and that goes to the cars. You got 2 tracks, double track, you know. One car, one was for the fine ore, and then you had one for the coarse track. And you got belts going over to these hoppers, big hoppers, and the cars were underneath those hoppers. And the loader man could load the cars. He's sitting up in the air, you know. He could see way down in the cars. He'd load them. Car riders would come out and ride them down the track. And we would line them all up. Great Northern come and get a load when they were going to load.
Okay. All right.
And leave the empties up here.
All right.
Bring in the empties and leave them up here.
Did the fines then go out across the road into, or
The fine tailings?
Yeah.
Yeah, they had tailings in,
And they went over to the tailings pond.
that went across 63 or whatever it is, this
Yeah.
road. Not
Yeah.
63, Sugar
The
Lake
Sugar
Road.
Lake
I don't remember the, but it went across Sugar Lake Road. And the fines went over there, and getting a lot of your core stuff was piled around here. Like you see that pile out there in the road. And I think there was a lot of it dumped back out by those big dumps. All the coarse rejects. And they used it for road material. Since this was just a slime pit, clay, they had to have a lot of coarse stuff to put down, because it would just turn to slop when it rained. There was no gravel in this area.
Yeah, yeah. And well, you said that they used the stone to...
Yeah, once you got the plant going, then you get stone. You know, get a lot of coarse stuff like you got out there, and that's good road material for them trucks and stuff. So but first they didn't have any of that, and they were having a hell of a time in here. Couldn't get the trucks up the pit, out of the pit, spinning out. And this whole thing was nothing but soup, all the roads. And so they got a whole bunch of little local truck drivers, little boxes, and they were hauling from the West Hill. Whole fleet of little dump trucks. And they had to be small ones because you couldn't get across that high bridge. It's limited weight.
Oh, sure.
So you had these little trucks coming in.
That was long before they built the...
Before they could get the plant going to get the tailings.
Yeah.
You see.
Okay.
Once they got the tailings, there was no use for that. They had all the raw material they wanted. But that's the way that went down. The West Hill's in a big gravel pit, that mine. This is in one of these places where there's nothing but clay and crap all the way down to ore. All the way down to ore, it was heavy.
All right.
They couldn't scratch any good gravel out of this place. It's like all the geese in the world that flocked in here and lived here. That's about what it was amounted to. Stick to your shoes and try to your shoes to be that wide. But that ended when they got all that coarse, and they could fill all these roads up with that.
What ended the mine then?
Huh?
Why did the mine end?
I think it's a lot to do with profit, and then it had something to do with that amendment. The state passed that taconite amendment.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Okay. And then all these mining companies want to stick their money into the plants. Pick and Mather's own this. They're the ones that started hitting taconite.
Yeah. So that's where the money flowed.
They wanted to get into taconite because of the money wise. They're more profit.
Sure.
You get a good cut on that taconite, good tax break versus the ore, and I guess the steel mills liked it. They could get regular uniform pellets. It's easier in the steel mills to process, make steel.
Yeah.
They loved it.
Yeah.
Other than that big coarse chunks.
Yeah.
And this got a lot of silica in it.
Right.
So that was why I think the main reason they quit these ore mines. All money.
Okay. That's the water tank that was left here from the mining operation. Isn't used anymore. Just thought you'd like to see the water tank. This is the weir. This is the weir. Or the place where they drained the water back into Tioga Lake through the ditch behind me. So they pumped the water out of Tioga Pit into this tailings pond and let the fines settle out, and the fresh water ran back to Tioga Lake through that ditch. What did you say?
The water come through. This is clean water coming out of that tailings basin. Tailings basin's right over there. It comes out and it ran through this ditch back through the swamp there and into Tioga Lake. This is clean water. After it then went through several of them settling basins, they call it, where it settled in the silt and all that. And it flowed down through here. The water was fairly clear then, time it got here.
Well, look at the big I-beams they have holding it in place.
Yeah. A lot of water go through here.
A lot of concrete.
Yeah. And then here was rodents piling down in there. It looks like it goes downhill there too, doesn't it?
Well, they brought water from both directions through this sluiceway.
Yeah. You can walk down here and take a look.
Where are we now? We're just outside of Cohasset?
Yeah.
And
Just heading for the government dam.
what is this?
But this was the old railroad grade into Tioga Mine.
Oh, okay. And you can see where they built it up with steam shovels?
Oh yeah, yeah, they do. They crown this way up.
And it's perfectly level.
Pretty good. Pretty darn straight.
It took them 2 years to build?
I don't know how long it took them. Really don't.
Well, they started the mine in '53, and they didn't ship the first ore until '56.
56?
Yeah.